Good Monday morning, everyone.
Good morning.
We're all here, which is good. Today, I am elated to introduce Cliff Krell, who is going to be speaking about reading aloud. I was looking at a lot of the History Channel, and I just realized, well, you probably already know that the Bible usually says in according of the gospel. And the reason it says according to the gospel is that no one back then really wrote or any, or a lot of people didn't read, so someone actually spoke the Bible. I never knew that. They spoke it, and so now when you read it, it says according to the gospel. Then someone translated and put it into the Bible, and then that's how they traveled. They call it the gospel, which is good news. That's what they traveled around. So basically, this is basically what Cliff is doing. Basically, what we read aloud, or not the good news, but basically some information. But that is how things were done thousands and thousands and thousands of years ago. But I'd like to introduce Cliff, who is been a member for quite a while, and is an insurance salesman. And Cliff's speech is Behind the Sealed Door. Welcome, Cliff Krell.
Scott, will you pass that? Oh, yes. Good morning.
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 Archaeologists are explorers, people traveling on the sea of time to discover the past. They dig in the earth, searching for objects used in long-gone civilizations. Even a piece of a vase can tell a great deal about life in ancient times. This is the story about one archaeologist, Howard Carter, and his great adventure, an adventure that led him into the golden world that had not been entered for more than 3,200 years. Carter went to Egypt in 1890 when he was only 17 years old. He went not as an archaeologist, but as an artist. His father was an artist and had taught young Howard to sketch. He had taught his son well, so well that he had been hired by the British Museum, and now the museum was sending him to Egypt to work with a famous archaeologist, Professor Percy Newberry. He would be sketching the items found by Professor Newberry and his explorations. After a few years of archaeology, Carter left and went back to painting, and he spent 3 years painting as a painter. Then Carter met Lord Carnarvon. Carnarvon was a very wealthy and interested in archaeology also. It was more than a hobby to him, the archaeology. Carnarvon offered to finance Carter's exploration in the Valley of the Kings, and so he returned to archaeology. Why Carter set out his heart to finding the tomb of the boy king Tutankhamun is not known. However, years before, Theodore Davis had announced that he had found the tomb of Tutankhamun. 3 clues led him to believe this. Near a small cave, he found a cup with Tutankhamun's name on it. Then a short distance away, he found jars with the king's name on it. And in the cave was a gold leaf, again, with Tutankhamun's name on it. At last, Carnarvon had been so patient in financing these explorations, but he was getting discouraged. But Carnarvon was so touched by Carter's determination that he agreed to finance 1 more season of digging. In those days, the season for digging in the Valley of the Kings was November through April. On November 1, 1922, Carter was ready to begin his final dig. On the first day, he and his men uncovered a group of workmen's huts. By the 4th day, they had removed the first hut and the sand beneath it. When Carter arrived that morning, a step had been discovered in the rocky floor of the valley. By day's end, 12 steps had been uncovered, showing the upper part of the doorway, almost certainly the door of a tomb. Carter needed all of his self-control to keep from breaking down the doorway to end the suspense for once and all. After years of patient searching, was this to be the discovery of Tutankhamun at last, or just another door with emptiness behind it? And so as Howard Carter descended the newly uncovered steps and stood before the sealed door, the same reason to wonder. Was it possible that this tomb had remained undiscovered for over 3,000 years? Howard Carter did not enter the tomb right away. First, he sent a telegram to Lord Carnarvon asking him to come quickly. If it turned out to be Tutankhamun's tomb, he did not want Carnarvon to miss the moment of opening. Today, it would take only a few hours to go from London to Egypt, but in 1922, it took 3 weeks. At the site was ready. Carefully, the door was removed. Before them was a passage, and then another door. Carter drilled a hole in the second door. He held a candle inside, and for the first time in over 3,000 years, light pierced the darkness. It was kind of the strange objects everywhere with a glitter of gold. Carter was unable to speak for a moment. "Can you see anything?" asked Carnarvon. Carter forced the words out. "Yes, wonderful things." Apparently, thieves had broken into the tomb, and in their search they scattered things about. Whoever discovered the robbery, priests or guards, had put back the objects in a hurry. The door then had been resealed. Perhaps it was at that time that the tomb was buried and the workmen's huts built over the entrance. This was a fine idea, and we owe a great deal to the person who thought of this. Otherwise, Carter would not have found the tomb with great treasures. Carter guessed at once that another room containing the mummy of King Tutankhamun had to be connected to this first room. It did not take him long to find it. It was tempting to go through the third door, but Carter was careful and a dedicated scientist. He knew he had to clear out the antechamber, and it was filled with valuable objects before going to the next room beyond. It took 7 weeks for the hundreds of objects to be photographed, listed, and carefully packed and removed to the laboratory. Opening a passage to the burial chamber was exciting, and as exciting as entering the antechamber, maybe even more exciting. Because the coffin of Tutankhamun was inside, or was it? Perhaps the thieves had stripped the burial chamber too of treasures. This time Carter and Carnarvon were not alone. The objects of the antechamber had been so exceptional that the room was filled with Egyptian officials, famous archaeologists who watched as Carter slowly tapped and broke the door, a hole in the other door. When he had large enough hole, he flicked on his flashlight and peered within. What he saw almost took his breath away. Later he wrote that it seemed as though he was staring at a wall of gold. Actually, he was looking at a huge box or shrine that filled almost all the space in the burial chamber and shone because it was covered with gold. When the door was completely open, Carter and Lord Carnarvon had the honor of entering first. Carter edged his way around the magnificent shrine, which gave him only a narrow passage between the shrine and the wall. Two beautiful vases were blocking their path. Carefully, Carter marked the location and passed them back to the other room. Finally, they found the shrine doors, and their hearts pumped with disappointment. The doors were not sealed. The thieves had penetrated this far into the tomb. Had they taken everything? Slowly the two men pulled the doors back and saw another set of doors. To their delight, the doors of the second shrine were fastened with rope and stamped with the unbroken seal of the official guards. Carter and Caravan knew that within this shrine lay the world untouched for nearly 3,200 years of many kings buried in the valley. Tutankhamun alone, throughout the centuries, remained undisturbed, sheltered within the dazing golden shrines. On the ground inside the doors of the first shrine was an alabaster jar with a lion on top. When Carter found it, it still had cosmetics placed in there from where they were for the king's burial. Carefully carved heads formed 4 legs on the jar. Each head represented the enemy whom the Egyptians had conquered. Carefully, Carter closed the great doors. He could not go any further until next season, when the outer shrine could be dismantled. The two men silently continued along the passageway. Along one wall, they came upon 11 paddles and oars. The Egyptians believed that the king would need them to row himself across the waters of the underworld. The next season began with the difficult task of removing the huge outer shrine. It was 17 feet long, 11 feet wide, and 9 feet tall. The shrine had been brought into the chamber in sections and put together. It would have to be removed in sections also. Scaffolding and hoisting tackle were set up inside the crowded chamber to assist in the removal of the massive sections weighing as much as 1,500 pounds. When the outer shrine was removed, the linen curtain covering the second shrine was treated with chemicals to keep it from disintegrating, and it was then rolled onto wooden rollers and removed to the laboratory. With the outer shrine and the curtain removed, Carter was able to inspect the second shrine. It was very similar to the first shrine. Its outside had decorations of beautiful scenes to guide Tutankhamun on his journey to the underworld and to explain the evil powers that he would run into on his route. Carefully, Carter cut the cords, fastening the doors of the second shrine, and removed the precious seal. When these doors were opened, Carter found the third shrine. The doors of that shrine had been fastened and sealed just as the second had, and the seal was also unbroken. When the cord had been cut and the seal removed, the doors were opened, and to reveal the fourth, even more beautiful shrine inside. Carter called this a moment indescribable. What would the fourth shrine contain? With great excitement, the bolts of the unsealed door were drawn back, and the door swung open, and inside was a huge stone chest called a sarcophagus. At each of the corners were carved the goddess with wings spread out, encircling the sarcophagus to keep out the intruders. Thank you.